One of the things I look forward to every summer are these Filipino-style barbecue sticks. By using an overnight marinade and basting them in a sauce as they cook, you're going to get meat that is full of flavor and incredibly juicy. In this video, I'm going to be making my barbecue sticks using pork, but you could also use beef. I recommend using either New York strip or filet mignon, or you can even make them using chicken thigh. And in the description, I'll be leaving ingredient amounts per a pound of meat. That way, converting the recipe will be a bit easier.
If you're going with pork, then the best choice is going to be boneless pork butt. Mine was already pre-cut into cubes, but they are still far too large for barbecue sticks. Breaking the pork down into smaller pieces can be a little tricky, as it's going to depend on how it's prepared by the butcher. But I'll show you a couple examples on how to cut different pieces so you can get an idea. Basically, you want to cut your meat into 1 to 1.5 inch cubes. But not every piece of meat is going to be a perfect cube. So try your best to visualize and ask yourself if this meat would look appropriate on a skewer. I know I just said cut the meat into cubes, but the pieces should actually be a little thinner in one dimension, so that way the meat can cook all the way through. For pieces that are thick, but too small to cut in half, you can butterfly them to make them wider and thin them out. Pork butt has a lot of fat, but this fat is kind of essential as it brings a ton of flavor and it's going to help keep the meat incredibly juicy. With that being said, we're not going to need all of the fat, as we don't want a piece of meat that is nearly 90% fat. You can trim off the excess fat, but make sure to still leave some so that way the meat does not dry out. When making cuts, try to spread the fat out between multiple pieces if possible. Now that the meat has been cut into more manageable pieces, it is time to add in the ingredients for the marinade. To the bowl of meat, add in some soy sauce. The Special Swan brand is always a great go-to for any Filipino cooking. Then, banana ketchup, which should not be confused with your standard tomato-based ketchup. This can be easily found at almost any Filipino store. Followed by that is some coarsely ground black pepper, brown sugar, pineapple juice, and some freshly squeezed lemon. Ideally, you would want to use calamansi, but they are near impossible to find in the US unless you grow them yourself. And the final ingredient for the marinade is going to be some fresh garlic, and lots of it. If it looks like I have a lot of garlic, it's because I do. But keep in mind that I am preparing 5 pounds of meat, so my situation might be a little bit different than yours. The best way to peel this much garlic is going to be to first smash it with the back of a knife. Then the papery skin should easily peel away. Don't be afraid when smashing your garlic because the more finely crusted it is, the better. This would also be a great time to use a garlic press if you have one. If necessary, you can go over the garlic a little bit with a knife so the pieces are a bit smaller. After all the garlic has been crushed, add it to the marinade. The best way to combine all of the ingredients for the marinade is going to be to use your hand and massage them into the meat. Be sure to take a few minutes so that the brown sugar and banana ketchup get fully dissolved into the marinade. After mixing all of the ingredients together for about 3 minutes, cover the bowl and leave it in the fridge to marinate overnight. When it's near time to start grilling, remove the bowl from the fridge and start placing the meat on wooden skewers. Make a fist with one hand at the bottom of the stick and use that as your starting point for the first piece of meat. On average, you'll get about 4 to 5 pieces of meat on a skewer. Manipulate the pieces as necessary so that the meat covers every inch of the skewer. Any exposed wood will burn during the cooking process. Soaking the skewers for about 10 minutes in water is also a good way to prevent them from burning. For any pieces that have a long and skinny section of fat, I found that the best way to handle them is to wrap the fat around the skewer a few times. We don't want any pieces hanging loosely on the skewer, otherwise they will burn when grilling. It can be difficult to pierce through some of the pieces if they have a thick layer of fat, So when struggling to get a piece on, make sure your hand is out of harm's way before applying a lot of force. Before we go out and start grilling, we need to prepare our basting sauce first. To do that, it's really quite simple. Just grab a fine mesh sieve and pass the leftover marinade through it. After that, add in a couple more tablespoons of banana ketchup and a quick squeeze of Knorr Liquid Seasoning. Whisk everything together to break down the banana ketchup, and the basting sauce is done. Preheat your grill over medium-low heat for 5 to 10 minutes. And then brush your grates with a paper towel that has been soaked in a high-heat oil. This will prevent the meat from sticking. After that, lay down some foil at the bottom of the grates, just right before the burners. The sheet of foil was folded into thirds, which is the perfect size to protect the handles on the wooden skewers. The foil will serve as a barrier to prevent the sticks and our fingers from burning when we go to rotate them. You can lay out the barbecue sticks on the grill with them directly side by side. The meat will shrink as it cooks, and the spacing will work itself out perfectly. When all of the meat is on the grill, you can start basting them. You'll want to rotate the skewers and baste them every minute or so. The more frequent you can do that, the better. And if you're cooking a lot of sticks like me, by the time you finish basting all of them, it's time to rotate them again. If you're cooking pork, keep the heat around medium-low, but adjust throughout the cooking process as needed. If you're using steak or chicken thigh, then I would suggest keeping the heat around medium. The lower and slower method for the pork will give the fat more time to render. And as the fat renders, you're going to start getting flare-ups. And another thing that's going to start causing flare-ups is the basting sauce itself. The basting sauce has a lot of soy sauce, and in my experience, anything with soy sauce will cause flare-ups on the grill. So adjust the heat and move the sticks around as necessary to combat the flare-ups. Keep the lid open the whole time while grilling. And between basting, rotating, and putting out fires, it's likely that you're going to be moving around the whole time from the moment the meat goes on the grill till the time it comes off. But once you get the rhythm down, it's honestly not so bad, and it's actually quite a bit of fun. If you're wondering, it is totally possible to make these on a charcoal grill. That is how they are traditionally made after all. But it's going to take a lot more skill when it comes to temperature control and handling flare-ups. So if you don't have a lot of experience with charcoal grilling, I suggest starting out with a smaller batch at first. Grills typically tend to be hotter in the center, so be sure to rotate the sticks that are on the outside towards the inside, so that way all of the meat will cook at a more even rate. If you're cooking pork, your total cook time will be around 15 to 18 minutes. Bring down the heat if your meat is cooking too fast. Beef tends to dry out much faster than pork, since it's usually a bit leaner. If you're cooking beef, aim for a cooking time of around 10 to 12 minutes. Towards the end of the cooking process, if some of the sticks are starting to get a lot of char in them, you can stack them on top of each other over a low heat burner. After 10 or more rounds of basting, the barbecue sticks have developed an incredible glaze. And when you bite into them, they are still juicy, and that is thanks to the rendered down fat. There's just the right amount of sweetness to enhance the savory flavor from the soy sauce, meat, and other spices. I can never imagine going a summer without having these barbecue sticks, and once you give them a try, I'm sure they'll reach the top of your list for your favorite things to grill.